Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. And today I have Jonah Larson. Welcome to Fiberchats.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, it's so interesting because you're only 17 and you're so accomplished and you've done so many things. So today we're going to go a little bit talking about all the things, some of the things you've done. I don't think we can cover all the things you've done in 45 minutes. So let's see how far we're going to get. So you told me that you were born in a rural village in Ethiopia. Can you tell my viewers a little bit your story, like from your origin to how you were adopted and how you ended up in America?
Yeah, so it's actually a very interesting story, and it all started back in a very not well off area of Ethiopia. It's called the village of Durrani, which is of course where I'm originally from. And so as a baby, my mother presumably couldn't take care of me, so she left me wrapped in like a banana leaf um, under a tree, so I'm protected from the sun, as well as by like a walking trail that people went down to go fetch water.
Mhm.
So she knew people would cross that path and find me. So, as my mother wished, a lady named Zenebek found me and brought me back to her house. But at that time, she had several children and she couldn't like feed me. That would just be another mouth to feed, which she couldn't manage. So she brought me to a nearby orphanage and they took care of me. And then I went to a couple different orphanages, and the nannies there, they do their best with the limited materials that they have. But anyway, my mom and dad decided that they wanted to adopt from Ethiopia for their next kid because they already have my brother Leif, who's currently 21 years old. But anyway, they decided they want to adopt from Ethiopia with a brand new charter program. So one day, while they were driving back from Minneapolis with my brother Leif in the car, they got a call, and at that time, like phones couldn't receive photos and things like that. So the person on the other end of the line said, "When you get home, there will be a photo of your baby boy on your computer." So my parents came home and they rushed downstairs to where a computer was at the time, and they saw me for the first time. So then, a little while later, after filling out a bunch of endless paperwork, they made their way to Ethiopia, which of course takes a long time and a lot of planning. But when I was about 6 months old or so, they brought me back to the United States, and I've lived the rest of my life in La Crosse, Wisconsin, right on the Mississippi.
So tell me a little bit about how did you learn and when did you learn how to crochet?
That's another really interesting story. And both situations just seems like happy accidents that, work out amazing for everyone. So when it comes to me starting to crochet, it all started 12 years ago when I was 5. So what happened is I have an aunt on my mom's side who just loves the craft. She does pretty much everything you can think of except crocheting and knitting, whether that's quilting or cross stitching or pretty much anything except crocheting or knitting. But when she was cleaning out her craft room, like her craft supplies and all those things, she wanted them not to go to waste. So she gave them to me and my other two siblings to look through and to see what we found interesting. But somehow, while I was in that bag, I found a shiny metal tool after I had passed by some blue and green yarn. And that kind of attracts my eye when I was 5 years old. It's like a shiny tool.
Right.
And I take it and I'm pretty much sprinting to my mom to ask her like, what is this? Like, what can I do with it? What's its purpose? Um, but anyway, my mom tells me it's a crochet hook and that she doesn't know how to crochet, but her mom crocheted when she was younger. And then she finds me a YouTube tutorial on how to make a dishcloth. So I go back in the bag after I remember that I found some blue and green cotton yarn. And I sat down at our kitchen table where I'm sitting right now. And I proceeded to watch the tutorial a couple times. And within an hour or so, give or take a little bit, I made a pretty nice crochet dishcloth. And at the time, I didn't know it, but that was actually quite impressive. And then from there, I just was like, well, I made a dishcloth this fast. So I thought, why not try a hat or why not try a scarf next or anything else like that? Just like keep upping the ante. And at the time, I was just doing it because I could make cool things. But I've learned to love so much more about crochet other than the instant gratification of making something when you're done.
Have you ever taken any like online classes or in-person classes to learn more, or was it all YouTube?
Me learning to crochet was pretty much all YouTube. I found different stitch tutorials, different patterns, and that was how I really enlarged my knowledge of crochet, to put it, and fiber arts. And I was able to learn so much because whatever I wanted to make, somebody had made a tutorial for it. And it was really enjoyable to learn that way and to be able to follow along. But in terms of teaching classes and learning from classes, I've never actually really been a person that goes to a lot of crochet classes,
Mhm.
but that I've, taught them. I have my own DVD that teaches people how to crochet in like really simple steps and how to make simple swatches. And I've also taught in New York at Vogue Knitting and in my local library in my town of La Crosse, Wisconsin. So it is really something that I enjoy doing when it comes to teaching crochet.
Has there ever been time when you lost interest in crochet, or was it like from the first day, love from the first sight?
Since I've been doing it for 12 years, you would think that at some point I kind of, lost my passion and interest for crochet, but it just seems to only, get stronger. Like I really, before when I started, like I said, I did it more for the gratification, but as the years progressed, I learned that now I was able to speed crochet, and a little bit later, I was able to crochet with my eyes closed and just watching a movie with my family, without messing up. And then after those two things, I found out that I also really like crochet because of its calming effect. Whether it's that the yarn in the hook, or slowly seeing your project come off of the hook, or needles if you prefer knitting. And then later on, when I was a little bit older, I found that crochet is a great source to give back to people. Whether you're giving yarn to a church to make prayer shawls, or you're making items yourself, or you're making items and then auctioning them off to go to good causes. So there's so many ways you can use crochet to give back. And I found all these things along my own like journey through crochet, and it just made me love it even more.
I know you said that you taught at folk knitting and at your local library. Have you taught your siblings how to crochet?
I have not. My brother doesn't like to do anything pretty much with yarn. Um, my sister, she actually learned when I was teaching a class, so I guess that kind of counts as me teaching her. But my mom, she does a lot of my social media stuff for me and helps me keep all my yarn organized. But that's about as much as she does when it comes to actual crochet. They're all there to support me in their own ways. Not all crochet related.
What made you decide to start selling your projects? You told me something about the braided cowl.
Yes, the braided cowl was everyone's favorite. So when I was younger, I had just started making items, and I would just usually give them away to family or friends of my parents. Um, but anyway, I made this item called the braided cowl. And after that, it was super popular and people loved it. So people would start to order it, and then they would ask for like a really custom yarn, like really specific yarn that they really liked. And then more and more people started to order it. So eventually, at one point, when I was pretty young, keep in mind, I had over 4,500 orders for one item, and it
Wow.
was a cowl, braided cowl. And of course, as a let's say a 12-year-old, I'm not able to make 4,000 over 4,000 cowls. So anyway, my mom had to stop taking orders from people. And then what we did is we made a website, jonahhands.com. And then things I do make and things I'm, not intent on keeping, I sell those online for people to have.
Do you mind making something the second, the third, the fourth time? Do you enjoy repeating the same project over and over?
Yeah, I do. I find something that like repeating a project is kind of like doing something you love, but it's just you already know you like this pattern and you know you like how it comes out. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it again. And with that, you just kind of learn to memorize the pattern. Like after I make a pattern, I kind of have it halfway memorized, but if I make it again, I kind of just have it stuck in my head. Like I still remember the pattern for how to make that braided cowl and a lot of other things.
Do you remember how you first got discovered? Because like if somebody wants to Google you, there is pages and pages of material that's coming up. What was the first breakthrough, would you say?
Well, I would say there was a couple important breakthroughs in my journey to being who I am today. And that would all start off with putting my crochet items in the fair. So as I was really young, let's say 7 years old, most likely, I started to enter my crocheted items in the Cross County Fair in the kids section, as well as the open class for adults. And pretty much every year, I would win a bunch of blue ribbons and the Best in Show award too. And because of that, our local newspaper, the La Crosse Tribune, took notice and they did a story on me. And from there, a news station in Minneapolis, I believe, called Care 11, came out to my house and taped like a 6 minute video of me and learned about how I crochet and how I started and my birth story. And from there, it just kept popping to like bigger and bigger news stations like Forbes magazine and NPR and Good Morning America and the Today Show and, like you said, the Drew Barrymore Show. So from there, we just kind of spiraled out. So there was a few important, steps along the way.
I mean, how did you become best friend with Drew Barrymore? Because I've seen so many videos of you chatting with her, and she's really was like gushing all over you.
So originally, I met Drew Barrymore quite a few years ago when her show was just a pilot show. So it wasn't a real show yet. They were just kind of pitching the idea. And anyway, she had me on, and I crocheted a bunch of cool things for the set. And after that, she wanted me back when her show became a real show. So I became a kid correspondent for her, whether it was crocheting, reviewing books for celebrities, giving updates on like the latest like interesting news stories, or any other plethora of things. So we've started to have a really good relationship, and I really enjoy doing that.
Were you ever nervous being on TV, being interviewed? Like, was it nerve-wracking?
Yeah, that's something my mom says. She kind of expects that I'm going to be like really nervous or kind of worried, but I've never really had that. And at this point now, my mom kind of knows that I'm not going to be nervous anymore. But she was really surprised the first time I went on a TV show that it was more like she was more nervous for me than I was nervous for myself.
Right. Well, you've told me about the Chicago bobble cardigan. That was your first published pattern. What made you decide to announce to the world that you are now a designer? How did that journey happen?
Well, actually, when I think about it, I have published other like patterns before, um, but not like one-off patterns online. Like for example, quite a few years ago, I made a Christmas bobble blanket that I put in Annie's Crochet magazine or online. I don't remember exactly. And then I made a few other designs like for your inspirations in the past, but I never really was a designer. So I kind of dabbled in design. Then recently I've started working with Hobby, and they're from Denmark, and I've had such a great time because I really, flourished as a designer. And like you said, the Chicago bobble cardigan was really my first like big pattern, and it was meant to be a statement piece that was really noticeable and kind of funky, but really trendy. So after that, I've started to make at least 12 designs for hobby now. So if you go on and look me up, you'll find a bunch of patterns that I've made from my lathe shirt for my older brother to a really intricate lacy top to a color splash bucket hat to Christmas like crochet drum baskets. So many different things.
Well, describe to me, how do you design? What's your process like? Do you sketch first? Do you dream of the idea? Do you take pictures for inspiration?
Yeah, so what I like to do is I go to like a store where things are really, in fashion and on trend, and I'll just like take a picture of something, and then I will think of like how this thing could be like better or what could I completely change about it. So anyway, I will go back home and go in my room and grab a sketch pad and kind of sketch out schematics like how wide this should be and how long this should be and the height and width and all those different things. So anyway, after I do that and get like a nice schematic idea of how I want the thing to fit, I'll think of like colors and patterns and the way the two are going to interact for a nice color scheme. And from there, then I have to decide how I'm going to do it logistically, like how many chains it's going to be, what stitch I'm going to use, negative or positive ease in the fit. It just really depends.
Do you feel like you're learning as you go? Like, when you look at your first designs, do you think like, oh, I could have done it differently now? Like, do you analyze your previous designs?
I do. I feel like some of my really earlier on designs could have been better because that was just me really starting out as when I was younger than I am now. But as I've gotten older, all of my patterns are unique in some way. Like I intentionally make them different to have people learn something new. Like the way my bobble cardigan is made, it's made in two different pieces that's seamed in the back. Um, so there's just always something kind of different about how I make my items. so that people can learn something new.
Is it difficult to write up a pattern for you? Because like you have some interesting ideas about construction, but between having an idea and implementing it in pattern, is there ever difficulty?
Well, what I do is once I make the item, I send it to Hobby, and then they actually write the pattern for me
Okay,
because all this time as a crocheter, and I am capable of writing patterns, but it's not really my forte. If you know what I'm saying, it's not what I prefer to do. I prefer to make the items.
right. You told me that you are an avid book reader. Was that what spurred your interest in creating library in Ethiopia? How did that idea happen?
Yeah, so ever since I've been a really little kid, I've loved to read. I started reading at age 3, and I've just never stopped since. And anyway, because of that and being a really avid reader, I understood how important the benefit of having an education was, and that not everyone in the world is allowed to have access to an education. So, and my parents always told me about the conditions in Ethiopia and what it would have been like if I was still there, which is why I'm super grateful for my parents, of course. And anyway, I went to my mom and asked her, what can I do to help those kids in Ethiopia? And since my parents have always instilled in me, like the idea of giving back to others, my mom and my dad, and the rest of my family as well, helped me, set up a library in Ethiopia, in conjunction with Roots Ethiopia and thousands of my crochet friends. And from there, that library serves over 2,000 students in Durrani. It has 3,000 books. It has tutoring for the older kids who fall back on their academics after they have to work in the test fields, I believe. And let's see, also as a trained librarian to keep things, tidy and teach children how to use the library.
Is that
Um,
something that you can find a lot in Ethiopia, public libraries, or was that a new concept?
Maybe in like the bigger cities like Addis Ababa, which is the capital, but where this school is, this has a Gerba school, that was like unheard of. They had, to put it in perspective, they had dirt floors, so a library would be way out of the world. But
Well, you were dealing with the dirt floor problem as well, right? Like you were buying desks for the students, I've heard.
yep, we got them concrete floors now. We bought them 75 different desks. We got them a new science lab too, because theirs wasn't even really a science lab, with lab coats for safety, microscopes, goggles, all those different things. And then their science teacher actually has an award from the federal government of Ethiopia. And then from there, we couldn't stop, so we moved on to make new bathrooms for the female students to keep up attendance. And then after that, we realized that we've given them all their academic needs, but they don't have something to, keep them entertained out of school. So we gave their school a soccer team, a fit with everything that they need to have one, whether that's uniforms, cleats, goals, soccer balls, and all the other equipment necessary. And now we're doing that same thing for the high school, because that was elementary school and middle school.
Right. And you also bought a bunch of pencils.
Yes, I forgot about that one. We bought them pounds and pounds of pencils because before they were only using pens to write, so they couldn't, change what they needed to change. Especially at a really young age, it's nice to have pencils.
Right. Tell me a little bit, how did that happen? Who helped you to put all those? How did those funds were raised?
The funds were raised through auctioning off my crocheted items, my GoFundMe, which is a link to on my website, the donations of thousands of my crochet friends from around the world, and then lots of big donations going from like different celebrities too that I've met. So all sorts of little pieces coming together to make a really beautiful picture.
And are you planning to continue on this journey?
Yes, definitely. That's why we're now working on the high school. And then once we're done doing all the same things for the high school, we'll just start on the next project that they need.
And have you heard anything from the students in Ethiopia? Have they sent you any letters or anything?
Yes, they have, and it's been so nice to see the response and how they enjoy their new facilities. We've gotten pictures of students using the library and reading. We've gotten a short video in kind of broken English that was thanking me and everyone else for the library and for their science lab and so on and so forth. So yeah, they definitely are really grateful and are really enjoying their education.
Do you think you're gonna find yourself one year visiting that school?
I've really, really wanted to, and there's so many things that have gotten in the way, whether it's a religious conflict or COVID. It just seems like every time we plan a trip, something gets in the way, but I'm not giving up hope. I really do want to go back and see the work we've done there, as well as see my village where I came from.
Right. You published two books. Let's talk a little bit about it. Tell me about both of them and what did you learn about how to be a book writer?
Yeah, that was writing my two books was definitely a journey of itself. So when it comes to the first one, it's called Hello Crochet Friends, plus a few other things in the title. It was written by me as well as my mom. And there's two main parts of the book. The first part is my birth story and how I got into crochet. And the second part is kind of like a beginner's tutorial to how to crochet. And then a little bonus is a crochet pattern for an Ethiopian dishcloth, which you can make into any flag you like. And with that, that book it sold really well, and people really enjoyed learning about my story. And then because of that, we decided to make a second book called Giving Back Crochet in collaboration with Annie's. And that book is, as the name implies, entirely centered around giving back. So all the patterns are relatively quick and simple, but still very nice. And then they're all meant to give back to others, whether it's scarves or hats or blankets or care baskets. So pretty much everything you make in there is a great thing to give to others.
And there are some smaller things that you can make as well, right? There are
Yeah,
patterns.
there's little baby booties or little chapstick covers or all sorts of different things in there.
Do you think you're gonna publish more books in the future?
I would like to. I'd like to publish a book about like more about crocheting, what my life's been like since the first book. It'd be like a nice follow-up.
Right. Well, when you were 12, you got your very first contract with the company, yarn company. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so at the age of 12, I was reached out to by a really, large yarn company in North America and Canada, well, North America, and it was Yarn Inspirations. And I was familiar with their yarn. I've used it because Karen Simply Soft when I was younger was my favorite yarn. I just loved the colors and the sheen of the yarn and how like smooth it was to crochet with. And when they reached out, I was just over the moon and elated. I was just so looking forward to, working for someone and putting my talents to good use. So anyway, I would make tutorials for them. I'd make like, show and tells of my projects. I would crochet items, several a month, and put them on my Instagram. And I really enjoyed doing that because that meant I got access to all of the different yarns, and whatever I'd want, they would send me. And so I just experimented with yarns. I tried out new designs and new patterns, and that's where some of my really early designs came from.
How do you decide what company you're gonna work with? What are you looking for?
I look for a company that's going to like embrace me as I am, whether it comes with my designing, by certain yarns I really enjoy working with. But I also want to look for a company that is different from what I'm already doing. Because is, for example, when I went to Hobby, they had all these like lightweight and beautiful like silk and cotton and linen yarns that I never worked with before from Yarn Inspirations. So I like going with different companies that offer different things because it expands my knowledge as a crocheter and a fiber artist.
You told me that you are a very speedy crocheter. How fast can you make some project? Give me like an example.
I am a very fast crocheter, but of course that's come with 12 years of practice. So I can make, for example, I can make a hat. The last time I timed it, I can make it in roughly 40 minutes. And that's with like a double crochet rib stitch and things like that. Or let's see here, I can make depending on the scarf and what kind of scarf it is, I can make that in 2.5 hours. So I can make things really quickly.
You told me that your aunt used to dabble in multiple fiber arts. Do you see yourself trying other fiber arts like Tunisian crochet or knitting or sewing or anything?
I do know how to Tunisian crochet. I've actually made a couple of projects with that. Like I made a scarf with pom-poms on the end of it. Um, let's see, what else have I made with Tunisian crochet? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I've also knit before. But the project I made, I combined knitting and crocheting. I knit like a rib stitch on the sides of a scarf, and then in the center there was a cable that went back and forth. And then I put crochet shell borders around it and then added fringe. So I combined my, favorite crafts into one.
And you told me also that you dabble in another kind of fiber art. I mean, it's sort of fiber art, woodworking, right?
Yes, I do. So I've made at this point, I've just started last year, but I've made a chair that slopes back. I just made a watch box with like a end grain cutting board on top out of walnut, cherry, and maple. And then it has dovetail spines on the side, so there's like a little pop of color in the walnut with maple. And there's 8 compartments, and I've got that pretty much filled up. There's 6 watches in there right now. And let's see, I also made like a really cool wood knot on a CNC that like locks together. And right now, I just made a really interesting nightstand or end table for your couch. So what it is, it's like there's 3 entirely cherry wood like pieces that go together, and the rectangles I believe are 9.25 by 26 inches. And then there's a triangle piece in the center, and then all like the big boards meet into the center to make like a base for the top of the table. And then I Craig jig those in. And then for the top, I took strips of maple and cherry for the contrast. And then I put them together, and then I cut a circle out of it. And then I routed the edge so it's like an interesting bit so that it had a nice look to it. And then I just Craig jig that on to the top. And now it looks so cool. It looks like, something that I got inspiration from online, which I'm really proud of.
Do you think like you being a crochet designer influences your woodworking as well?
Yeah, it does because when it comes to crochet, you have to really understand like math and how math like works with things. So I found that like with woodworking, I'm really easily able to do the math involved in things and figure out how things will look just by kind of imagining them. And even better, when I imagine something in crochet, I have to figure out how to do it. And I've got that kind of helps me with my woodworking. So it's kind of like they go hand in hand, even though they're completely different crafts.
I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, my God, this young man is only 17 and he's done so much. And then you surprise me further and you tell me that you flew airplane 3 times. Tell
Yeah.
my viewers a little bit about that.
So I'm part of this organization called Civil Air Patrol, and it's like all about volunteering and helping people, whether it's through search and rescue missions or um, emergency medical services, and it's an auxiliary of our U.S. Air Force. So we wear the Air Force uniforms, whether that's the camo uniform or the blues uniform, ABU or the blues uniform. But anyway, when we do this, it happens like every Monday night over at our airport, and we teach us about leadership, about character development, about aerospace topics, and then of course we are able to have orientation flights, which essentially we're able to fly and learn about all the different things that you need to know if you're going to be a pilot. So I've flown 3 different times for over 2 hours each. It's really really nice.
Is it scary to be responsible for an airplane?
Kind of, but there's a trained pilot sitting right next to us, so he can take over at any time we screw up. So, not
What are your plans? Like, what are you planning to do after you're about to graduate, right? Like, what are you planning to do?
actually graduating in less than 20 days.
Oh.
So, depending on how things end up, I'm going to either continue with my crochet as a designer or go to the army. And then another option was going to the army and continuing with my crochet as a designer and as an influencer. Because I feel like I've worked for this for 12 years and I don't want to let it go, but I do still need to move on with my life and do other things as well.
Why would you want to go to the army? Like, what makes you want to go to the army?
For a lot of different reasons. It's a very helpful like character builder, which is always nice to have. It's good on your resume, and it's 3 extra years to figure out what you really want to do. And they also pay for your college, and of course, college is super expensive. Um, and it just serving my country too, which is always something I'm just glad to do.
Have people ever given you hard time for crocheting and being a guy who crochets? And are you concerned about going to the army and like people gonna be making fun that you crochet? Or do you think it's like people see it as something super cool?
In my experience, no one's ever, said anything, and that's surprising because of all my followers on Instagram and Facebook and other social media platforms. And I don't think people really, care that I'm a guy that's crocheting. They enjoy the items I make and the perks from it too. So it's something that I feel like everyone should try out.
I personally agree with you. I think it's like one of those almost like survival skill. You have to know how to make food, start fire, knit your own clothes, crochet your own clothes. Like it's one of those skills, right?
Yes, very much. And there's so many benefits that you can get from it, whether it's the calming and therapeutic, crocheting, or just making items for others. It's just so many great things come from it.
Do you find yourself often crocheting in public?
I do. I love to crochet in public all the time, whether that's when I'm on an airplane to go on TV, or whether I'm just, in the car with my family. Um, when I'm like just like walking around and doing things, I'm obviously not crocheting because I'm focused on, being with my family or my friends. But I do crochet out in public plenty of times.
Well, when people listen to this interview, right, they'll think, oh my God, he's so busy. He's doing all those things. He probably doesn't have time to spend with friends. How do you balance it all? How do you find time to have fun?
Well, I always keep that at the forefront. Like just recently, a couple days ago, I went to a movie with my friends after school. So yeah, I'm always finding things to do with other people instead of just working on my crochet. Because while I do enjoy crochet, just working on it 24/7 is not a way I want to pursue my life. So I love to read. I love to, be outside and play sports, do things with my friends, all sorts of different things, just to keep my life really well rounded.
Do you ever get tired of your fame, of people recognizing you, of people want to picture with you when you go to festivals and stuff?
Um, I just, I really just take it as, a blessing. I'm just super grateful for it because not everyone has this opportunity. And I just want to make sure that I make the most of it and make people happy.
I mean, do you remember like meeting somebody at anywhere, like festival on the street that people recognize you? Do you remember like first time it happened?
Um, I don't remember the first time it happened, but I do remember like some very memorable times. Like when I was walking with my mom in New York and we were trying to find a place to eat. Um, this person comes up to us and asked me if I was Jonah Larson, like crocheter, and I was just really surprised because I didn't think with like all the millions and millions of people in like right on Manhattan that someone would like notice me and like come up to me because I didn't really think people like really took big notice of each other in New York because there's just so many and all everything's going on at one time.
Do you think everybody can crochet? Do you think there are people who just like absolutely cannot learn how to crochet? Do you think a good teacher can teach anybody?
There's people that think they can't crochet. Maybe they've tried it before, but they haven't tried learning the right way. There's a really specific way you want to learn with a really basic stitch, and then you want to use a chunky yarn and a bigger hook. And while it may take some time, usually the most difficult step is getting your yarn on the hook and figuring out how to hold it right.
Last year, I remember seeing you at H&H Americas, and you were wearing this beautiful cardigan. It was like absolute showstopper, and people were talking about it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's actually my Chicago bobble cardigan, which the pattern is available on Hobby. And I meant that to be like a big statement piece. So what it was, it uses Hobby's Udon yarn, which if I recall correctly, that's 50% acrylic and 50% wool. And I used it in like a really kind of a dirty cream or like a really light beige color, and then a really nice golden color, like a darker gold. And what I did is I made the two separate halves in the cream, and I used the extended half double crochet stitch to kind of add a nice ridge and texture to the roving yarn. And then down the sleeves, I made it a drop sleeve, so it just pattern continued down. And then right about here, I turned it into a tan background with gold bobbles all over it. And I finished it with kind of like a balloon cuff at the bottom using that gold color. And then right around the neckline, I made it a gold ribbed neckline. Same on the bottom. And that I also added pockets too, but I made them invisible by using the same color and same pattern and then sewing them up and down in a way that you wouldn't be able to see them. So, all those little things really contributed to make that one of my favorite patterns of all time.
Is there like a favorite yarn that you always come back to or gravitate to work with?
When I was younger, I always went back to using Karen Simply Soft, but now as I'm exploring more yarns, I found that Hobby has a lot of yarns I'd like to go back to, whether it's their Olive yarn or their Friends Cotton Silk or just their like Friends Cotton 8/8 because N86, N84, because there's so many different saturated, beautiful colors, as well as yarn's just like a really sturdy and it's a really nice yarn to use for all sorts of projects.
Right. Do you have favorite colors that you go back to? Like, is that blue and green stays in your life throughout the years?
I do love blue and green, but if you take a look at my Instagram, you'll be able to see I use all different colors. And I think that's a nice part of being a crocheter. You kind of can put random colors together sometimes and it'll come out beautiful. Just like the way the colors work with the stitches, and every project is unique in my opinion.
I saw recently a post on your Instagram, Easter post with you and the bunny from like a few years ago.
Yes.
How do you balance, like, let's say projects that like indulgent projects just for yourself, something that you have a desire to make at the moment, with what's on the schedule?
Well, what I do is the projects I want to make are the ones on the schedule. So I'm, killing two birds with one stone per se. And it's because I all the projects I make are things I want to make and I'm invested in. I don't make projects that I don't want to make.
Do you like making toys?
I do. I love making amigurumi. It's so fun with using like that small yarn and a small hook, and you can see it like forming out into the animal or whatever you happen to be making at the time. And it's just so cool to see the finished project with all the details and the little added extra thing. And I really do enjoy it.
How many projects like are in your head at any given time? Like when you're designing something, are you already thinking about the next design, or you a monogamous crocheter?
That kind of changes sometimes. Like sometimes I'm really thinking about like all these different projects and just keeping them straight. But other times I'm really, really focused on one project. It kind of depends the difficulty and level of time this project I expect it to take.
Right. What are your hopes for this year's H&H? What are you hoping to see, to who you're hoping to meet?
I'm hoping to meet a lot of really fun people that I met with last year and see a lot of the same companies again and people that are part of those companies, as well as being the next gen. Last year, I met the next gen that they had, and she was a really great person, and I learned a lot about quilting from her. And I'm excited to take that mantle this year and do as best as I can to teach people about crochet and show everyone else what the next generation is about.
Yeah, and I'm super excited about our interview at H&H. We're going to be on the main stage on Thursday, 12:35 to 1:35. So if you guys visiting H&H, please join Jonah and me for this interview. It's going to be very interesting.
Yes, it will.
Well, I'm so grateful that you found time to be on guest on my channel today. I really enjoyed our little chat, and I wish you all the very best of luck in your future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I can't wait to see you at H&H.
Thank you.